So welcome again to the students, to all the people participating to this meeting. Today we are with Franco Rolle. Thank you, Franco, for being with us. This is the fourth appointment. So I'm not going to present ADI as all the people participating to the meeting, either from the Accademia of Verona or from Arab American universities are aware of what ADI is and so on and so forth. We have connected with us some people also from other universities. Mostly students are from the Accademia of Verona and Arab American University, but there are also people from other universities. All the meetings are registered, so be quiet as everything will be registered. This is an advice, obviously, for students. At the end of the Franco presentation, we will have time for questions, so please follow us and keep asking and being demanding at the end of the presentation. Obviously, we are both available during the presentation should you have the impellent request for something which is not clear or for technical problems. I just want to remind you that as you are students, you have not the possibility to ask to be ADI members as professional designers, but you can request to become aspirant members, which means that you can start being part of this magical community of ADI. And myself and Franco, we are an expression of ADI members. I can see that there are some other professional members that are following the presentation. So thank you for those kind of people for being with us. Now it's time for me to switch off and let Franco present the marvelous project made by his studio. I just want to remind the name of the meetings, which are called MED. MED stay for Meet-ID Designers, but mostly want to represent the level of madness that is required to be a designer, because we have the responsibility to improve the way people live. So we have this great responsibility. So I'm happy to introduce Franco Rolle, and I'm happy to discover your point of madness. Thank you, Franco, for being with us. To you.
Well, thank you to you, Antonella, and for ADA for the invitation. And just a question, how long time I have to make a speech?
1 hour and a half usually is the duration. Other presentation lasts 1 hour and a half, and then we will let students and other participants to ask questions.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here because I like to talk about what we are doing and what we are designing. We are a little, let's say, outsider in the field of the design because we are dealing with different subjects that we're kind of mixing together and creating something that is already not very well known. So to start, that's what I thought to organize this meeting. It's more than a speech, it's going to be like a kind of brainstorming because I like to be like that. And so we will work on our website, and also have made a short presentation, but I would like to start introducing you with a video that we did to explain and to focus which are subjects of our works. So now I have to share the okay, you can see
Yes.
the website. Okay, so starting, I want to start with this video. The video is a kind of showreel of our work. We have a Vimeo channel, so if you're interested, you can visit our channels and also Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn channels. So here's the video. Then we talk about that.
L'atto del narrare ci definisce come esseri umani e crea un legame con gli altri attraverso una continua connessione tra passato, presente e futuro. L'uomo da sempre raccoglie e conserva le tracce di tale connessione. Mostrare le storie che vivono dietro a queste tracce, rendere accessibile il patrimonio immateriale, esporre ciò che si può solo raccontare, è oggi una necessità imprescindibile. Con un uso intimo del linguaggio visivo, si può raccontare una cosa che non ha forma né colore, come la musica. Si può entrare nello spirito e nell'anima di un artista, avvicinare il suo percorso di vita al nostro percorso di comprensione della sua arte. Si può raccontare un luogo e coglierne l'essenza nel tempo. Si può scoprire cosa si nasconde dietro l'opera di un poeta, i suoi capogiri, gli smarrimenti del cuore, le verità svelate. Si può arrivare tutti a perderci nell'infinito. Progettare un'esperienza significa anche dare la possibilità di esplorare intimamente le proprie emozioni. Essere in uno spazio fisico significa vivere una situazione in modo diretto e condiviso. In un luogo si stabiliscono relazioni, si creano illusioni e spaesamenti. La realtà
Problemi di connessione.
il multimediale diventa materia che plasma l'ambiente creando forme dal nulla. Lungo il percorso, capita che il particolare si rispecchi nell'universale. La storia di uno diventa quella di molti. In un luogo, la dimensione digitale si fonde con la dimensione fisica. La materia e la forma degli oggetti non sono mai disgiunte dalla loro essenza immateriale. La narrazione si articola nello spazio in un flusso simile a un viaggio e ciò che si apprende lungo il percorso diviene indimenticabile, proprio perché le emozioni scavano un solco più profondo nella memoria. Il racconto stimola la sfera emotiva. Le metafore visive spettacolarizzano i contenuti, ma l'emozione rimane solo se al piacere del cuore si lega all'appagamento del pensiero. Creare nuove visioni significa dare alle emozioni una direzione. Significa condividere con la committenza e con il pubblico i propri sogni, lavorando incessantemente fino a che il racconto diviene l'opera.
Okay, so I hope I had some problem in the middle of the video, but I guess help you understand and maybe I wanted to introduce you what we are doing. And so we are designers, but particular kind of designers because we are using non-traditional material like video and multimedia to build up the space we are designing. And I just want to start you with a short introduction using sentences to better explain the focus of our work. So I share you another short presentation, and after that we will talk about our projects. Okay. Okay, so let's start from the name. So the name NEO is the name of our multidisciplinary design office based in Milan, and that was founded by me, Franco Rolle, and by Fabio Molteni and Cincerizzo, that are my partners. And the acronym NEO indicates narrative environments operas, and is a result of our research in the design of the narrative environments, which mainly translates into the creation of multimedia exhibitions and museums, but it's also open up in any time of context that presupposes a communication project in relation to a place. So, what are narrative environments? Designing and creating narrative environments means creating stories that simultaneously involve physical space and present time, here and now, giving direct experience and intrinsic, let's say, philosophical value. And in this current panorama, very characterized by the impalpability of situation and the instant and facilitated access to any type of knowledge. I'm saying that because now we have a mobile phone in our pocket and we can access to a lot of information simultaneously. We think that rethinking the concept of a direct experience shared at the same time by mind and body represents a particularly exciting challenge. Space, time, and action. So let's say that by actualizing the Aristotelian units of space, time, and action, it can be asserted that in the narrative environment, the action, the content of the story, is articulated, the beginning, the development, and the end, within a space that is exhibition path, and a time that is a visiting time, by linking the story told with experience lived by people in the narrative environment space. To be or not to be there, that's the question. And being in a place is naturally very different from not being there. Being in a place means, above all, to be, to exist, or to be present to something or someone. Being in a place where a story is disposed, means choosing to dedicate precious time to a moment of enrichment of the self, giving importance to the story itself, even before it takes place. Going specifically to a place where a story is basically told makes us choose to be social individuals, even just because that place is frequented by other people. Being in a place invites us to share and experience directly or indirectly with others and allows us to stop time and attention on something that fascinates us or awakes our interest through a dedicated and in-depth approach. Places speak. Each space already communicates emotions and notions in itself through a visual code, whether it is characterized by traces of a distant past, signs of present life, or line design for the future. This very first level of perception of space is a raw material of the narrative environment. The story that comes to life within the path is created to exist in this space, whose character is enhanced of any structural limits or are overcome. Words at the center. The presence of original works of particular artistic and architectural interest of the historic scientific relevance within a narrative environment must always be considered with the respect. When present, the work is related to the other elements of the story, but the corpus of the narrative remains the work. The story created about it allows to better bring out its intrinsic value, so that it is universally assimilable and shareable by all the audiences. The legacy of the past is in continuous dialogue with the present through the simultaneous provided by the intangible connections, consisting of what is known about the work and its epochal context. Even in the case of architectural works, the characteristics of style and intended use, when of significant interest, must be represented as much as possible to allow what was first thought not to be subjected to the harmful action of a blind and deaf present. In any case, a greater level of awareness reached can only enhance the meaning of the work itself. There is not only one way of reading things. In a narrative environment, the contents, that is what you want to tell, are designed to be assimilated through a multi-level reading, which involves both the emotional and the rational spheres at the same time. Experiences, emotions, or sensations arising in the context of a narrative favors the acquisition of a mnemonic fixation of the contents in a way not only related to the sphere of thoughts. For example, the body also has a way of learning, moving, or remaining motionless, relating to a space or to a presence or absence of people and objects. Or again, the surprising or unusual aspect of a thing, a situation, or a person can stimulate the unconscious and cause an instinctive or not completely rational reaction. The narrative environment is a necessary hybrid. In the narrative environment, the presence of images, written or recited words, sounds, music, objects, lights, and whatever else is functional to a story is organized and calibrated on a certain time of use and on a given path. The story does not proceed solely on the basis of the passages of time, but is articulated and develops in space, merging in its essence multiple aspects borrowed from different fields, such as art, architecture, cinema, theater, photography, music, writing, the web, traditional exhibitions works, technological research, and others. The narrative environment can therefore be defined as an expressive form that blends many elements from these and other universes. However, the hybrid and the composition of the narrative environment is more than ever necessary in the contemporary interpretation of knowledge and living, of working and having fun. Synthesis versus misery. This is complicated, but the deepening of the treated themes, whatever they are purely invented or scientifically objective, is a fundamental aspect in the design of the narrative environment. And assiduous confrontation with authors and scientific communities, when present, characterize the passionate work of study, research, and verification, which are designer must that all the designer must face before and during the organization of the contents. The rule The rule of the design of narrative environments in this sense too often is misunderstood. Its aim at obtaining an exhaustive and correct synthesis of the topic covered, translating their essence into different languages and media than the original sources. An effective and innovative communication of content through the tools deemed most suitable based on the special temporal peculiarities of the path, the topics covered, and the broadest and the most disparate types of public stands in contrast with the scarcity and inconsistency of too much communication, often as slave to fashions and, let's say, technicalities that are homologated reading of the world. And that means that innovating does not mean getting. The innovation does not necessarily mean staging the latest technological innovation or abusing new visual, sound, or textual codes that follows the dictates of fashions in terms of communication, but investigating the potential of the various systems or styles by adapting them to the technical or expressive functions designed ad hoc for each context. What appears desirable is that overcoming of the concept of traditional use and the archivance of an expressiveness that fully involves the attitudes and behavioral types of the human being, making experience within a narrative environment as an engaging factor, surprising, pleasant, but above all, useful, that possibly a lasting mark in the memory of personal experience. The interaction versus the interactivity. In the present, where everything has been made interactive and participatory, the word interaction begins to take on a different meaning that is a very near past. The concept of physical interaction through technological interfaces and devices must not be considered as an entity in itself exhaustive of communication, disconnected from a general sense of the narrative and exhibited too often as a source of pride by the client, as proof of the innovative nature of the project. Metabolized knowledge versus exhibited knowledge. The so-called new technologies universally arouse great curiosity and interest, often a high rate of latest generation technological equipment characterize the earth of the exhibition. This should never happen in a setting in general, but even more specifically in the setting up of a narrative environment where everything contributes to create an atmosphere and the unity of the story. Technology must be used in function of the communication project, remaining one of the many tools available and never an end. For this reason, the technological set must be hidden or camouflaged as much as possible, even in this possibility, and this doesn't become the protagonist with respect to the meaning. Durable innovation, and that's very important because most of the time we are dealing with permanent museums. And when you are dealing with permanent spaces, it's different than dealing with temporary spaces. In this case, you have to guarantee the durability and the validity of the experience. and all of the elements that is part of it. Because the museums are no longer, and must not be longer, dusty and static places, but on the contrary, they must be perceived and experienced as a contemporary, vital, and nowadays place in connection with other local entities or other part of the cities that must be part of the museums and in which they have to create a dialogue. And these relations has to be designed to be to have a very long time of living. And finish, so I just finished. I want to talk a little about Neil, like in a live element, because that's how we are working. We are a multidisciplinary team, and to create these projects, it's in compulsory creating teamwork with different people that has to be part of the designing. And not only, most of the time we are working with the committee, and we want to put the also the historical subject inside the design process. But it's very important. All the projects we did are the results of a very huge teamwork group. So now I finished. Maybe it was a very boring part, but I want to make you to let you understand a little better with some statements of what we are doing. Now, let's go to the projects. Sorry.
In the meantime, I ask students if they do have some questions, because this part, thank you for sharing with us the values that are behind the way you organize projects. So I really appreciate that. I can understand that it's quite abstract for students, but it let them understand that values and concepts are more important than technologies in a sense, even if you work a lot with technologies, but you are paying attention more on concept and values more than the technicalities, because technicalities are changing in time. So I really appreciate it, and I'm wondering what are the consideration on that by students later on.
Yeah, I know it's maybe it looks very complex and complicated, and it is actually, because it's something that we're starting from. It doesn't exist before, so we have to create something new, and we try to make our own way of designing, and also our own way of expression of what we wanted to do. And but maybe I don't like to talk too much, so it's easier to see the project and maybe to talk about what we did. And I want to start with this project that is called Design Opera. And maybe I have some problem for the first time of connection. Okay. Okay, so I show you the video, and then we explain a little about how is our approach. Okay. So this project was, I want to start with this project because it was done for ADI in the 2014. And
I was there in terms of the place to be or not to be. I was there, so it was a great opportunity to express, to participate to this happening. How can I call it? Directly in presence.
Yeah, it was, we have our way of thinking about exhibitions, and what we want to do is not just to expose objects and create the sculpture for the design. And when the ADI asked us to make this exhibition, and the exhibition was for the Arti Design Index 2014. Is maybe for the students, the people that don't know, every year ADA, the ADI makes a collection of the best design of the year and creates a catalog. And after the catalog, there's an exhibition about all the objects selected. The objects are very different, so there are different fields like furniture designs, but also graphic, and I don't know, there are a lot of subjects. At the moment, I don't remember. So, what was our approach? Our approach was starting from a reflection, for a brainstorming. You know, we are spending a lot of time in our office. We have a round table that is really round, so it's not just a word. In that we are sitting all around and we are start to have a discussion about how we can approach to this problem, let's say, because all the projects are problems that we have to solve. And in this case, what we want to do, and there's a different kind of making exhibitions, and there are different styles, and so all the projects are possible. So this is one way of making exhibitions, but what we I want to start with this project because maybe show you better than others our way of thinking. And what we want to do is to create and to focus the project into the idea of attraction. And that's why we started with music. We used the Tosca, Visti d'arte, Visti d'amore, which in this opera by Puccini, the main singer, she's saying, why I lived, for love, and why it happens to me, this, at this moment. And so we started from the idea of love, but love in the sense of attractions. And we wanted to find and to investigate relations between people and objects. And if all these objects are so different from each other, no? Why are you attracted from one kind of chair and, for instance, and not another one? So what's the relation you create with objects? And that was the first question. So the opera was done in 3 acts. The first act was about the idea of love and of attraction between people and objects. The second question, because we made 3 questions to the audience. The first one was this, the idea of why do you, when you meet people, you have your love experience, then you notice one person among thousands, and the same for the object. You noticed one design object between tons and thousands of other. So why are you attracted to these objects? So what's the relation you create with the objects? And the second, there were so many projects and objects, and we put all the objects on these, let's say, wide days, long 35 meters, and a little by chance. So we didn't think that much about what was the position of all the elements. But for sure, if all these elements were on the base and they were selected, must be something that make them in connection with each other. And so the audience has to kind of think about that. And the third one was idea of time. And so the third act is about time. And the idea of time we wanted to ask is not only, and before I told about that, the idea of the durability of the design. So how is the time of living of the object? And the idea of the time is not the lifetime, but also the daily time. So what's the time of object inside your daily life? And what we did, we put just some projectors, the beamers on the ceiling, and we projected in all the objects from the outside with 3 different kinds of light design. So we use the projector instead of the normal lights to enlight all the objects. And the first in the first act, the objects were appearing by chance, and we also make this. We use this music that we redesigned, the music by Tosca, to create the idea that from music you can create design. And so that's because we wanted to put on stage not the tangible part of the design, but the intangible part of the design. That's mainly what we are doing. And dealing with intangible aspects of the object. And so all these objects were like appearing from the darkness, and you can see for a moment, maybe you got interested because was a kind of flashing. And this is what happened when you get in love with someone or something. You see for a moment and you get attraction, but that's attraction, it happens very fast, and so you cannot control it. The second one was the connection between the objects. And so we designed this kind of digital dust that was composing these lines that were like going up and down the object. It was also the lines and the dust was deformed by the shape of the object, and it was trying to connect all the objects in one, let's say, one object or one only object. And the third, in the third act, the space, we used the white light, so we didn't add any color. We just used this white light to create shadows that was changing the object, well, enlightened and changing the object, creating a different perception of them to the audience. At the end, all the objects were enlightened from this white light. We want to use the white light because the opera, the singer is singing under the moonlight. So we want to use the moonlight atmosphere and to enlighten all the elements that were on this base. And the people can go around the base, and on the wall was of traditional informations. But the idea was to put on stage not the object itself, but the relation between objects and people. And also because we still think that science can create a better world, and all the objects that were there were thought by designers for the people and to help people, to make the people more comfortable and to make people better life. That's the aim of design, and that's what we were wanted to talk about. So let's see another project. Okay, I show you this project. Okay, so this project was, we were asked from the Fondazione Pirelli 2 years ago to make these exhibitions because Fondazione Pirelli had a huge archives of material that was collected in the years because Pirelli is an old factory that now is producing tires, but before it was using plastic to create different goods like raincoats, like shoes, and all the elements where the rubber can be used. And at the moment, the rubber was a new material, and because was came from this, let's say, new material for a new society, let's say. They used a very famous graphic designer, photographer, and architects to design their communications and their goods. Unfortunately, most of the case we are called to make to design an exhibition that, as I told you before, is dealing with the intangible aspect of the object. So we are trying. So what we are designing stories, and we are designing stories into a space. In this case, it was not so easy. I show you the project. Maybe I'd like to introduce you a little before what we design in this case. We are always trying to have this process of design. We have to always try to taking off and to clean as much as possible mm, the space, but also the communication to create something that has to be very clear to the public and to the audience. In this case, all the project can be simplified into one thing, very simple. I'll show you one photo. This one, this element, a little white ball that was, according to us, a kind of Virgilio that was welcoming the visitor and was like bouncing into the space around the visitors, and it was activating informations that came to the audience in a very unexpected way. So I'll show you the video, then maybe we can discuss a little more about it.
Anche per me, indossi un modello stupendo, per forza un Pirelli, anch'io me lo vorrei.
Okay. So that's why I wanted to show you the video, because it's very important, because we are using image in motion, and we are using this image in motion as material, construction material into this for the space. And so without you seeing the videos, it's most of the time it's very difficult to understand how our design works. So in this case, the main idea was to create as let's say environment design this two-layer space. One was lighter, one was darker. In the darker this bouncing ball was moving all around, but also the audience, also the visitors, were moving in the space area of the ball. That's why, because at the beginning, what means that the ball is a little detached from you, but at the end of the path, the balls was getting outside the wall, was going into the pavement, and was creating an interaction with the public that can like play a little with it. And this ball then was going back to the screen, activating this video that you've seen part of it. And I also want to tell you that for creating natural environments, you have to design not only the space, but also the content. So we are starting from the content. We are transforming the content into multimedia materials that has to be designed to be fitted into the space. So that means that most of the times the materials we receive, also multimedia materials, cannot be used for creating narrative environments. Mainly in the traditional exhibition, the video is just put inside the monitor hanging on the wall. But for narrative environments design, you have to redesign all the content that has to be thought to fit into the space, and the space somehow is related how we design the contents. And in this case, if you think the space without the contents, the space has no meaning, is meaningless. But if it's the content we designed without the space, it's the same. So contents and space are linked together because they are designed together. So these are more images. But now you have the site. If you want, you can go back to the site and have more time to see all the photos. So maybe with more time.
Yes, the suggestion is to see again the video on the website, because obviously using the distance and the platform don't let you appreciate exactly the time and the sounds and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So,
also because I like to make an interaction with my audience, with the students, and also like to stop and not to just talking, but I like the students make some questions if they understand, and to create more interaction between with the audience. But nowadays it's not possible. But in the future, in the soon future, maybe we will make it again.
you're always one step behind. So using this platform, videos are quite complicated, but I can understand that to present your job is, I mean, it's impossible to understand it without seeing the videos. So I'm just asking the students to see those videos again, so they can fully appreciate the pleasure of the video. Sorry for the platform, Franco, because your work are marvelous, and what I'm getting from your presentation is really the fact that you are. I mean, you are always able to build a pleasant place to stay and to be experienced. So I'm very grateful for the experience I'm able to participate. Thank you to your job. So
Yeah.
sorry for interrupting you.
No, thank you. I'm very glad when you make the time, because I get a little annoyed always talking by myself, and so I like to talk with the people mainly. And I know it's pretty complicated to explain our job, and because non-traditional design it's difficult. Maybe more you know, better you know. Also for the students that are coming in our studio for making internship at the beginning, they don't really realize what is happening, but with the time they understand much better, and then they're totally inside our strategy of design. Um, so let's go on with another project I want to show you. And maybe I want to show you this project, maybe for foreigners, people is not so well known abroad, but this is a Italian singer that is Renato Zero. Renato Zero is a very famous Italian singer since the 70s and introduced, it was the first that introduced in Italy this aspect of being gender fluid. And it's this topic at the moment, it's very discussed. And so the time has changed. Maybe not that much, but in 50 years. So it started 50 years ago to perform dressing up in a very unusual way. Let's creating deep impact with the Italian society of the 70s. And that was not only in Italy, that was all over the world. So all the gay movement starting from Stonewall from the 60s and 70s, and it creates a movement. And but the Renato Zero is a peculiar artist, and he had more than one life. And he came to us and he asked if we want to make exhibitions. And it was very interesting when we met him the first time because he said three very important stuff. First, he wanted to create an exhibition. He wanted to make an exhibition, but didn't want to make an exhibition to, let's say, celebrate himself. We wanted to make the exhibition not for of the costumes, because he's very famous for all the costumes used for during the concerts and during the video concerts, because he already did a lot of time. But this time, and for in this peculiar period of his life and of the world, we wanted to talk about the history of Italy, and in which for a little break maybe he built, he put something, and also he wanted to make an exhibition dedicated to the young generation and to create a positive attitude, because he wanted to tell the young people that if he could arrive to make what he wanted to do, and his name Zero, that is zero, means he called himself Zero because it started from zero. And so this attitude has to be tell to all the young people that it's like fighting for their rights at the moment. So it was very interesting, his approach. And it was very difficult for us because we did a lot of time. So dealing with music is another intangible element, and it's so difficult to find a way how to put on stage, to put in the space in music. Our main idea and our main concept was to design all the space like a huge DNA, and this DNA has been developed all around the space. The space was in Rome. The exhibition was held in Rome, Pelanda. This is contemporary art space, and And was now I show you the video, but maybe later I will show you more information about how we designed the space. There's no. Wait a moment. I have a problem because I know the. Video site. Why?
In the meantime, I'm going to share the first link, the one related to the opera, so you can find the video there. You can find it in the chat. And then... I have too many works, I'm not able to find it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Per lei come è meglio che gli uomini e le donne abbiano gli stessi diritti oppure la donna deve essere inferiore?
No, io un pochettino inferiore, ma non una grande stacca.
E cominciò questo mio eterno carnevale, fatto di pancake, di rossetti smaglianti e di coraggio. E qua ci vuole coraggio. Bisogna resistere per esserci. E tu vuoi essere, vero? Il carrozzone va avanti da sé, con le regine, i suoi fanti, i suoi re. Allora sei tu, il mio assassino. Sei un essere abbietto e depravato. La normalità di cui vai non è altro che il riflesso di me stesso. Il cuore d'ogni giorno è un'esperienza in più. La mia vita è nella stessa direzione. Tu è diverso da me, che tu sia. Tu sei il re di una notte di magia. Rispettate voi stessi, così come gli altri. E quando vi capiterà di fronte il nemico, andate davanti a lui. Andate davanti a questo nemico che è di una fragilità incredibile. Andategli di fronte con tutto quello che ci avete dentro e fuori. Guardatelo negli occhi attentamente e poi ditegli, Reino, mi vedo. Smonto la paracchia, cambio zona itinerario, l'indirizzo è la posta. Mi aspettavo, lo sai, un rapporto un po' più normale, senza casualità. Saremo sempre insieme. Dove che porterai il sorriso mio, la mia spezia, rispondi a chi dedicherai la cura in fondo, la fierezza, rispondi. È il momento di uscire sera che capirai silenzi e chiaroscuri, lo stormo di pensieri che volano da te. I misteri soffrono il disagio di non poter essere svelati, ma questa è pure la loro forza. Incuriosiscono, talvolta sconvolgono, altre volte ma noi siamo ostinatamente disponibili, siamo pronti a stupirli raccontandogli la storia di un meraviglioso mistero. I don't want to not baby. I count them all the ways you control. It's in the mind that the bird to say that it's in the morning, God. It's in love. Bending on the wind horizon. It's a common warning unto you. Vittime di un tempo che non ti perdona. Inventi le mie forme. Lo stile è quello tu. Poso per ore davanti a te, mi dipingi di sole anche se non c'è. A un tratto trovo te.
Okay, so I'm sorry for foreigners because this project has sense for Italians because this is the Italian singer, but there's something going on. But
Just to let them understand, is Renato Zero is like David Bowie or Elton John at international level. He did really the difference, changing the mindset of Italian people, and there are lots of fans which are called Sorcini, that stays for little mice, because I mean, whether you like his music or not, everybody appreciate what he did for Italian culture in terms of mindset. Sorry for interrupting you.
no, thank you very much. So the idea of the design is DNA, and DNA, there was also why we use the DNA, because the DNA is something that all the people, as a human, we have a DNA in common. But the DNA also is something that make people humans, so different from, like, for instance, other animals, or the animals have their own DNA. But at the same time, the DNA make up make us all different. And so this was the focus of our project, to find out the way to represent something that is universal, but at the same time is the opposite, so it's peculiar. So, and how can we try to use it to represent the DNA Renato Zero, that are these little white lines that was mixed up with the DNA of Italy, that were all the white lines. So all the exhibition was structured like that. And sometimes this project was becoming from static to dynamic. So the graphic was becoming animatic graphic, the graphic was becoming video, the video were becoming video set or video graphic. So all the things were mixed up. In the site, for the people who are interested, sometimes at the end of the text, okay, there's the PDF. We are putting inside our website some of the project we did as presentation, so maybe that's interesting for the public and also for the students to show up how we represent on paper, let's say, our project that are so difficult to be represented. In this case, so this was the design of the locandina, I don't say in English, of the exhibition. And this was the plan of the La Pelanda, in which you can see, so because I'm part of the book, the master plan of the exhibition. It was divided mainly in two, because the Pelanda has this space that is an open area. So the people was entering, was passing through the first hall, and which you can see all the DNA on these glazed surfaces, was passing by to the second one, then to the third, and this was the first part of Renato Zero life, because at the beginning was just a part of the 70s, middle of the beginning of the 80s. And then there was this huge passage, this corridor, because this author, this artist, has a huge problem at a certain time of his life. And so he had this kind of wanted to retire because he had nothing to say. And but then he went to Festival di Sanremo in the '89 with a song called Spalla al Muro, and there was a song that was somehow saying that the song say I'm old. Everybody told me that I'm old, and but with this song there was a steady innovation in the theater, and there was a huge success of public. So at the end of the passage, there's all the corridor. We put all the voices of all the articles and all the critics against him, and at the end of the passage, you find yourself with this exhibition at the Sanremo exhibition with the '89 with the Spalla al Muro. And the second part of the exhibition is about is contemporary production. We are using the 3D. We are designing all our projects in 3D, and we are putting inside the 3D all the content, dynamic content, because we want to test all the elements that we are designing and testing by real. So we're using this augmented reality to control our projects. So these are some plan. I don't want to bore you with the let's say technical aspects. Just to show you, this was designed before the opening, but then it's very similar on what you have seen. So all we are designing has to be controlled by much before to be sure that we are not we are creating something that it works, and that's very important because we are not designing non-traditional spaces. So it's easier for architecture, for interior design, to design 3D models that represent, you know, how the project will be. And for us, it's more complicated. So that's why for us, it's very, very important to control the space and also to put the contents that we are designing inside inside the workspace to test it before. It takes a long time to prepare the exhibition like this one. And for instance, this year we take about 1 year from the beginning to the end. And these are some of the projects. And also there's a huge research because, for instance, in this part, there's a parallel between Paolo Pasolini and Renato Zero. And okay, for instance, this is also something that we are doing is design called triptici, are 3 screen synchronized video that can represent in space. So it's a kind of deconstructions of something that is normal linear in something that is not linear but is deconstructed and synchronized. And so that means the difference of being in space and living in space instead of being sitting on your sofa watching the TV or sitting on the tramway and watching a video on your mobile. So that's I would want to find a relation between the space and the audience, finding also different kind of narration and different kind of setting up the contents, movement inside the space. And moreover, there are like more this is an example I was saying you before that like the DNA in some parts were becoming and was a graphic animated, and that's the part that was very important. We can mix up the video of Renato Zero songs, the video clip, and we mix up with all the video documents we found about that period that was very interesting because there was like strikes, there was a feminism show on the street. We had a referendum for the divorce, and in the sense it was a period very, very complex but very rich of the things that were happening about the social rights. This screen was 16 meters long for 8 meters high. And so there's also some graphic we use inside the space. And we designed these huge little cute slides. And we also find inspiration from the art. In this case, we wanted to use the Kusama installation, and because of course the art is a very huge, let's say, way of a place where we can find solutions for our project, and so the people can get inside with these lighting installations synchronized. There was a message of Renato Zero to the audience, a message he wanted to make. And at the end, that was interesting. We made something very simple. I go very forward. I go forward very fast. You cannot see, but from in the last wall, in the back, the last wall, we did blackboard, which the people could. There were chalks you can see in part of the video. Show you. Can't be last one. Okay.
The PDF you are seeing are
It's
also available
but
in English.
yeah, no. Usually I can get out easily, but in this case it doesn't get out. I don't know why.
Ah.
Maybe it's Webex is doing something to the presentation. Okay. Okay. So the people can leave some notes from this huge blackboard. I go to the back because there was pictures of hands. Okay, you can see. And it was interesting. They can leave like a message to Untitled Zero, and every day the staff of Untitled Zero were like taking a picture of it and were like storing it in digital way, and it was cleaning up the board. So every day there were a new message, and it was creating this beautiful image, colorful, with a lot of messages. And not only for the authors, also about themselves, about their life, about what was happening. And it was very contemporary and was very interesting. So before I told you this aspect that we are using technology, but sometimes it's not compulsory. And so also a colored choice on the blackboard can create something interesting to the public and can create an interesting interaction. So interaction is not just clicking, as I said at the beginning. So maybe you understand better now what I was saying at the beginning. Some sentences that was like summarizing our approach to design. So using traditional techniques sometimes and mixing up with other very technological solutions, it works. That can be interesting to do. Okay, so about the music, it was sort of our first time we made an exhibition about music, but 2 years ago, we were the curator because sometimes our studio is dealing with different subjects. So we are designers, we're making content. Sometimes we are just making content. There's usually a committee that call us to make the exhibition in museums or these natural environments. But in this case, in some case, we are co-curator of the exhibition. So in this case, we have this idea because in that was in the 2018 was 150 years from the death of Paganini. So we proposed from Palazzo Ducale the idea of making the first exhibition about Niccolò Paganini. And Niccolò Paganini is a very, very famous Italian violin player, but also is one of the most important Italian music composer. And he invented something that never has been before. He was the first player, let's say classical player, that invented the idea of being an artist. Because before him, the players were like paid by the courts, by the royal courts all over Europe that were like paying for them to create music. And he wanted he made something totally different. He rented the theater by himself, so he was the first superstar that had this international like the contemporary singers. He had this concerts all over Europe. He was going to the theater, was renting the theater, was getting he asked the audience to get paid by the tickets. The audience was crazy. There was people shouting at the concert. There was people losing senses. So it was very invented the idea of a contemporary music artist. I showed you the videos in this case, and maybe later I will explain you better the project.
Il personaggio è, per l'artista, il serbatoio della libertà. Lì si può dire fare tutto, dentro nel personaggio.
Parliamo di quando uno va sul palco, come ci va? Ci va nudo sul palco, nudo dentro, nudo e puro allo stato puro dell'emozione. Cioè, ci vai sul palco perché c'è qualcosa che senti, solo ci andare.
Io credo che il segno più forte, più incisivo che la musica rock ci ha lasciato sia l'urlo della chitarra elettrica.
Io ho avuto la fortuna di suonare il violino di Paganini moltissime volte, alla Carnegie Hall a New York, a Parigi, a Edimburgo, a Londra, a Tokyo, eccetera. E la cosa impressionante di quel periodo fu l'evoluzione timbrica e sonora di questo violino.
La dimensione privata
Il
di Paganini
virtuosismo di
si
Paganini
identifica
ha avuto
interamente.
straordinarie influenze. Il pubblico, attratto dalle storie avventurose che si narrano.
Paganini è senza dubbio il grande genio della nostra epoca.
Il suo violino pare che parli, che pianga, che canti.
You just want me to take you for a ride.
Okay, so this project is very complex to explain. First of all, I want to tell you about the architectural approach. And as you can see, there's something in common between all our projects. We are not following an idea of style in architecture. We are using architecture as means of communication. So we set ourselves very free to change a style. Of course, there's something in common. The idea is that we have in common that we are trying to make the space very clear and very empty, because the space is empty of objects but full of stories. And so the stories is what we want to put on the stage. The approach is totally is contemporary always, so sometimes should be easier to use the approach, a scenographic approach to the design to represent something. So in the case of Paganini, could be easier maybe to create, to redesign the environment of the 19th century, or that's happened very often in the exhibition design. So to be didascalic, so we are talking about the environments, and we design environments. We are talking about the music, and we design theater. But that's an approach we want to have, because we want to have another kind of approach. The approach we want to have is we starting from the content, we use the content as material constructions, and we create space. Most of the time, all the times, maybe you have noticed, because the students are very smart to understand something, and we are working we are using a metaphor we use a metaphor as the way to find a solution clear to the public, to be put inside, and using that solution as a narrator of the story. So in this case, as we did with the DNA, for instance, of Reato Zero, in this case, the idea, of course, we have to deal with the music. It's an intangible good. And of course, it was very strong the idea of the theater, because Paganini was working in the theater, was using the theater as a space of communication of its music. So the idea was starting with the idea of the theater, but the theater we thought was, first of all, a contemporary theater, so a theater nowadays. And the theater was kind of exploded. So it was more than a theater, was the backyard of the theater, and what a part of the people never seen, because the audience sat in front of the stage. We wanted to see what's behind the stage, and so we used all these elements that were used and recomposed into the space. Using this huge let's say, screen, a wooden screen covered by this white fabric that we used for the projections, but also we used to create the atmosphere. And we had just two elements, the frame, the wooden frame, and this element that is a fly case. The fly case is used for all the concert and all the multimedia events, because inside there's all the services using this element to transport all the stuff. And so we redesigned the fly case to contain all the physical parts we had we wanted to expose, and also all the digital stuff we wanted we had. And third element was the idea of creating a bacheca. So we made some notes. We used a mirror on one wall, and on the mirror we had all these notes they were all over the space, and the notes were about were telling to the audience very short and episodes and very unusual image we have an exhibition, because exhibition, the name of the exhibition is Paganini Rockstar, and it starts with the story and the life of Paganini in the time, so it's a chronological exhibition, but it ends with the story of Jimi Hendrix, because Jimi Hendrix, the relation between Jimi Hendrix and Paganini, because Paganini was found out the solution in some passage of the music that was used 100 years later by a lot of contemporary guitar players to create their own music. So Hendrix used a lot of solution of Paganini to invent its own way of thinking the music. And also in this case, I showed you the project. Okay, that explains you how we manage and we try to control the space, we design the space. So all these are the entrance. So entrance was the entrance with this little statue of Paganini, but we put the lights and on this rotating basement, and so the public was entering with this huge shadow of Paganini moving into the space. Those are we thought about how we designed the space. Mainly there were like these elements I told you before, the frame. In this case, the frame printed that was evoking and creating a visual setup of the mood of the room, and the fly cases and the bacheca. At the back of the old frame, there was another frame that was in which there was we invited famous artists to talk about themselves, because we wanted about the stories of other artists to narrate the story of Paganini. And the artists we asked, as you can see, there was Morgan, there's Giovannini, there's Cardo, and Ivano Fossati, and others. Maybe it's interesting to see how we develop the plan. So maybe there's some students of architecture. So is all the 3D designer as I tell you at the podium. There's a part also for the schools where there was this interaction game, and they could play guitars and cellos, and you see those are the scenarios we found for the first room, for the second room, for the third room, for the fourth room. So this is the plan. Okay, the master plan. So you are entering. This is a very historical apartments of the Palazzo Ducale. So we couldn't touch any walls and any ceiling. So all the exhibition has to be has to be stand by itself. And this is all the architectural elements we added. So there are very few compared to the space. Most of them are just places where you can sit, so or where the audience could sit, because in most of the places people have to move around into the exhibition. Those are how we use the walls. So we add this material, this pyramidal foam material used for the recording rooms to introduce the idea of the sounds. The color was gray or red. And then we use these lines 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the scenarios we designed to create the mood of the room. So mainly the exhibition is designed to have 3 acts. In 3 rooms, the 3 acts were moto perpetuo with 3 different music, moto perpetuo, capricci, e l'adagio. In moto perpetuo, we want to evoke the idea of virtue. So we could play violin very, very fast because for its configuration of the hands. And so how to communicate this idea to the public? So we projected a sentence explaining the concept using a heartbeat very, very fast in terms that you could understand the text, but it was so fast that was impossible to for normal people to make. So we wanted to introduce how this attitude of playing so fast is something that is peculiar to him. In the second one, the capriccio is about the idea of be a talent, and we ask Roberto Bolle, that is very famous Italian dancer, contemporary classical dancer, the music of Paganini. So Roberto Bolle was very kind to participate in the project, and he made just for the exhibition a special dance show that we projected on these 2 synchronized screen. And from him, we wanted to put in stage the idea of a talent. And in the third act, was about the idea that he was an author. And so he was not just a player, but he was a very, very famous author that he composed very important operas. And one is the adagio, and we want to find out the idea how to create a relation between you that are listening to the music, you that you are in the audience and the visitors to the exhibition, and the people. So we went around the city of Genova and we made the people listen the music of adagio, and we recorded their face. And so that was very interesting because the people was wearing the same earphone, they were red, and were listening to music that the people recorded on the screen was listening. So this is the idea that how emotion, our faces, rich of the movement that create emotion, and how can the music modify and change our life, our face somehow. So these are all the video installation we had in all the exhibition. And these are the how we put the fly case. The fly case were three different fly cases. It was a normal fly case for used for like a box to explain, to show like the Paganini chitarra and the spartiti, I don't say in English. Whereas some were multimedials and some were just audio. So these are the patterns we have to design for multi people. So in here you can see how we design all the fly cases that has to be unfreeze.
Okay, now we can see the flight cases. Thank you.
And this fly case has been designed as it looks like a normal fly cases, but as you can see, we are using the technology we are using is not is a little hidden somehow. We don't want to put in evidence the technology, so everything has to be it has to looks like a normal. But behind this normal object, there was very complicated way of creating to transform this object usable for the audience and to put inside documents that have to be controlled for temperature, for light, and it was very complicated. Okay. Now I have to get out from the presentation. I hope I can get out. So here there are more photos about the flylight. Sometimes the objects the curator were talking about the contents that you can see inside the fly case. And sometimes we recreate this little theater that was in Loggione della Scala as a proportion in which people could see that, for in this case Morgan was talking about the talent. Sometimes just videos were used to create it was used as a material construction, as I always repeat. And this is the Roberto Bolle that is playing Scena 2, Capriccio numero 24. This was all the frame, all the wooden frame were designed to be seen also from the beside, and how the printed scenario were just used as to create a narrative mood of the room. In this case, we use the words as a metaphor of the success of Paganini in the world. So we just reported all the sentences written by all the journals of Europe, all the times Paganini was playing in that city. So words, they were like the words of the newspapers. As I told you before, the video now with the musica of l'adagio. This is the relation between what after Paganini, all the composer after Paganini, they took inspiration from some parts of Paganini to create new operas. So in all the fly cases is dedicated to one of them. And then exhibition, it was mainly without any color, became yellow because it became a little, let's say, psychedelic when the end was ending with the Jimi Hendrix installation. And this is the sound lab that was designed for the school. The first part, there are all there's this very famous violin maker that show how a violin is done. That is was very interesting for the school. There was this stage where the people in the school could play a cello and a guitar, and behind there was installations. As you can see, there was a kind of game where the school can go there to play with the music of Paganini to understand better difference between different instruments and how the mixer is working. So how, for instance, with Jimi Hendrix songs, a song is done by so different tracks and so on. So, what's the time? How much time do we have more?
It's 2:30, so we are almost done.
Okay, so I expect how many time I have to
Are you asking if we have time for showing another project? Is that the
Yeah.
question? I will say that probably it's time to ask students if they do have questions. As they are very shy, so I don't know if they do have questions or not. In case they don't have question, we can go on with another project. Or please, students, don't be shy, because personally, thank you again. I'm quite speechless because they are so amazing. Last time we met Studio Marco Piva, and everybody thought it was the highest level of complexity. But I think that now they know that that was a different way to approach a project. But the complexity is always there because you are talking in a simple way about projects that are very complex from a technological and also from a sense approach, respecting the place and so on. So, students, please, do you have questions? Just raise your hand to show us that you want to ask something. They're quite shy because also of the language. So you can ask questions in Italy if you want to. I can see Rawad and Maha, they're still with us. So we cannot understand the Arabic language, but we will try to do our best. It's time for questions, students. Not only students, because I can see that there are a few professional among participants.
Yeah, this platform, it's difficult to create interaction with the audience with this platform. But so how long time do we have
until now? But if you want to go ahead with another project, I will be more than happy to see the other one. I imagine you are going to present the sea in Milan.
Yeah, that was the last one. That's why I want.
Maybe briefly we can see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Because you know how I love you. Actually, my favorite one is the Paganini one because you were so amazing. Try to put together Paganini and Jimi Hendrix. So that really moved me. But also the scene in Milan that I would like just to underline the fact that New Studio was awarded with the Golden Compasso d'Oro in last edition. So that gives you the importance of this project. So it's a pleasure to see it. Thank you.
Okay. So what's interesting about this project and how it came out. And so I told you at the beginning, at the very first beginning, that we are dealing with museums and exhibitions, and not only. And at the moment, we are making a new research, and I hope that in the future we could talk about this new area of of using natural spaces and also for commercial, let's say, to strokes use. And so we are thinking how the retail is changing and how can and we think that an art environment could be interesting to be also applied for new spaces as retail, but it's a new project, a new part that's under construction. So I'm telling you that because in this case, San Lorenzo, that is the most important designer of yacht design in Italy and all over the world. It's one of the most important in the world. They wanted to, for the first time, present themselves inside Salone during the Design Week of Milan. And it's interesting because yacht design is a part of design, like the furniture design. So it's interesting that during the Fuori Salone there's a different kind of design. Also, our work is a kind of design that can be part of the Salone Mobile Design Week of Milan. And when Sergio Buttiglieri came to our office, we were very free. He didn't tell us what he wanted to do. Just say he knows our project, and so he asked us to create something to not just to talk about the yacht design, but to talk about the spirit, what's behind the San Lorenzo company. And so the idea was to design this project that is called Il Mare a Milano, for the people of Italians know that in Milan there's no the sea because it's in the north of Italy. And what we want to do is to design the sea in Milan. And the project is divided into, the project was done in the La Triennale of Milan, and there was an outside space and one inside space. The outside space, there was the sea, but not a normal sea. It was a journey through different kind of sea, because we were using two words, the sea and the ocean, to represent the water part of the earth. But there are different kind of seas and the seas change also because of the wind. So the wind has different name. So what we designed was a journey through different kind of seas and different kind of winds that create different possible way of living that kind of seas. And the people was entering the Triennale. It was a long corridor, and it was just passing on these, let's say, fantastic creatures. There was like swimming inside the inner sea, and then the sea was finishing, and there was a beach somehow. So the people was landing to the beach, where he found the space of San Lorenzo, and there was also this ironic yacht done by paper, in which you can find more technical and more commercial information about the project. So that I'll show you the video.
Che hanno un bisogno di attenzione per quegli spazi che sono un po' ibridi.
Un linguaggio un pochino più semplice, un pochino più onesto, perché credo che ad esempio lavorare con San Lorenzo mi abbia avvicinato a questo.
Okay.
Yes, I was there, so I told you in other situations, but I really thank you for that solution, because during that week of Salone del Mobile, everybody is running and and pushing and so on. So there we had the possibility to rest for a moment, relaxing and trying to think to be in other place in the sea, because in Milan there's everything but the sea. And so thank you for bringing the sea to Milan. There is a question. So it's a question from Maha Mansour. She's a student of architectural design from Arab American University. So she's wondering, but not only Maha, I personally am wondering. The question is, you use light in your designs. From your experience, what should be considered when using light? What are the main aspects one has to consider using light? I understand it's a general question, so we can stay here talking about this question for hours. But to summarize, what are the main topics you need to consider using light?
Okay, so in our project, of course, okay, lights is an instrument, and so the light design is another, let's say, subject and part of the design. It's very complicated. So the light designers are few, and it's very difficult to create a light design. So all the times we are using the light, we are asking for a light designer, because it has to be we need very professional experience to use a light. Unfortunately, in our project, the light create pollution. So It's just the opposite. Because we are using the beamer, the projections, and we are controlling the space using the movement as a material of construction. In our projects, the light always is a problem. So it's a problem that we have to control, because the lights that enlighten up in an object, for instance, at the same time create reflections into the space that can damage the other contents. So it's something that we are not just using, but we most of the time we are controlling the light, because for us it's a problem. And the same as for the sound, for instance, because the light and sound are linked together. The light, it sounds like the water. So as into the space, and especially in the open space, the lights and sounds goes everywhere. And so most of the time, most of the project has to design to control them. And as a part has to be totally under control. Otherwise, the space doesn't work. And so the communication of the contents doesn't work. It became chaos. And so sometimes maybe we won't create the chaos, but the chaos is controlled somehow.
I don't know if Maha, hopefully she's not able to switch on because she's connected with the phone, so she cannot switch on the microphone and the camera. So maybe you can write on the group. Anyway, are there other questions, students? Don't think, Franco, that that's for you, because lots of times they they haven't posed the questions, but they do afterward to me. So please.
Yeah, I know. I know. So it's out because on live it's different, and also I'm very informal person, so it's a problem too. But also our projects are very complicated. So also somehow it's also very difficult to make a question to our projects, because you can see from different point of view.
Yes, maybe you have some comments. What I really appreciate and I want to underline is the fact that you mention that you have a strong legacy with the past. So what I can see from your project is always a profound culture in terms of also a sort of a willingness to discover more and what's behind the history of people and what is normally on show. That's true for Renato Zero, for example. It would be very simple to just put on the stage the costumes or the some videos and so on. So you try to represent what was the background behind his life, and that's also true for Paganini. Trying to involve people either with a piece of chalk, like in the Zero situation, or a virtual mixer, like in the Paganini. So you pay a great attention to the interaction. So the question probably can be how are you able to pass from Renato Zero to Paganini to Martinit to San Lorenzo, because they are extremely different. How can you imagine? How can you manage those differences?
That's a very good question, because it took a long time to find out and to be conscious of the process of design we are applying now, because we was something in progress. Now it's we have been working since a long time, and it's not a problem to change the subject. Okay, first of the time we are studying. So part of the office, for instance, Fabio Botteni, that it's content editor of our office now. She always is studying the subject, and then we are making a lot of so we spend a lot of time of studying and discussing about the subject we are dealing with. And so it's not a problem to pass from one subject to the other. What is important for us is for what we don't like to do. And for instance, we don't want to entertain the people. So most of the time, our project, the contents are interesting, and we, as designer, I guess the problem we have all the designers, the architect, the furniture designers, we that make an exhibition, that we are working for the people, and we are working to create somehow a better future. And so we must be responsible. And what I don't like is the fact that at the moment this attitude of entertainment of the culture. It's so easy to create a very huge installation with very contemporary effect and with the right music and the lighting effect to create what we say the wow effect. It's difficult to try to communicate content to the people. So it's difficult to find out, to talk about Renato Zero, to mix up with the story of Italy, and to make the content also not heavy for the public, but the public has to get amused of knowing stuff. So the culture has to be fun. So our idea is to create the music, the culture fun. So the exhibition about Paganini was, I guess, it was very fun to visit. Also, we use contemporary artists inside, and but we always try not to entertain the people, creating, let's say, a wow or a cool situation. That it's easy when you have not the content. So also the case in San Lorenzo, of course, there was less content than with Paganini, but the attitude was the same. It was to find out what's behind the story of the San Lorenzo and to design the intangible aspect of the fact.
Great, thank you for your explanation, and I'm really speechless. So I think that you gave us so many solicitation that I can hear the students' minds working around those aspects. Oh, there's a raising hand. Paolo Di Gennaro. Okay, if you want to go ahead, switch on your webcam.
Hi, Franco, hi Antonella. Thank you so much for your talk and explanation and presentation. So I am an outsider basically, because as Franco knows, I come from another. We emailed each other, I think, and I come from a course in London, which is exactly narrative environment. So I know what Franco is talking about, but and I perceive the same, let's say, irritation for, especially, I don't know, during the last few years, not these two ones, but the previous ones, in Milan, during the Salone del Mobile, where there are so many experiences that you said the wow effect, I call the Instagrammable effect. And so, but at the same time, how do you manage, which is exactly, in my opinion, the opposite to what your studio does. But how do you manage to kind of, and so the first question is, did you see a kind of evolution in the way in which people experience exhibitions, installations, if there is like even in terms of the way in which museums ask you, I don't know, more engagement for people, more, let's say, space for participation, and at the same time, how do you manage this kind of, let's say, requirement with the need to tell a story, which usually is kind of linear. So there is beginning, middle, end, and in that way you cannot allow people to kind of lose themselves within the story, but at the same time make them participate freely to what you design. Thank you so much. Sorry for my...
No, thank you for being with us from London. Are you in London now?
No, I'm in Milan right now because I came back. Yeah, I was there during the pandemic.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. We saw we had the chance to meet because we didn't have the chance to meet yet.
Okay.
And, okay, the question is very interesting, and I guess I have no answer, but we are just watching what we are doing at the moment since the beginning, and you have to just always watching around, not only in your subject, but in general, because we are in the middle of the huge transformation, because of because of technology. So when we started our job, I started to design in 2000. So in 2003, the company started, but I was working before. And since then, so that time, the beginning of this century, we had the mobile phone, so we were using mobile to send text like SMS, and we're using mobile phone to call people, mainly. So the museums, there was two. Usually, when I'm going to talking, also I have some lessons at university, I have a class of exhibition design at the Polytechnic, and I say, okay, the history of the museum design can be divided in three. The first part, the museums were designed to keep, to collect the arts, and then to communicate this collection. Was the idea of the collection. And the second generation museums was the end of the 90s and the beginning of this century, maybe between the 80s and 90s, was the museums of experience. So we made, for instance, museums of resistance. And of course, in that case, people was very interested and very engaged with interaction, because for the first time, before it was just, the idea was to contemplating the object, but then with the second generation museums, you can get in interaction with the content. So, for instance, in Torino, there was this huge table, there was documents, you can touch documents, the documents became real, and all the communication, all the design contents were based on medieval interaction. But then, after, let's say, the first iPhone, I don't know, I guess it was one of the first that had the Android mobile phone. So it was about 2010. So I guess from 2010, we are talking about 10 years ago. And let's say that this started 10 years ago, but then the mobile phone became more evoluted. So there was a huge evolution of the mobile as a screen. It became bigger, and then the connection is faster. And so now we can get, since very few years, we are talking about 5 years, all the contents are everywhere. So we are living inside the contents. and we can see all the, I don't know, Leonardo's works on your mobile phone. There's a lot of content that done by very good producing company like a BBC that are making very great contents online about everything. And so there's this mass produced production of content. And the people are using their wireless earphone, I have their AirPods, so you don't have any, before you had a wire connected with your mobile, now everything is totally wireless. And so it's so easy, you are on the tram, the subway, or you are everywhere, you can see what you want. There's Instagram, and now Instagram introduced another communication, because for the first time, the people is using the video as instrument of communication. So, and before they were using words, and now they're using images. So it's a totally new movement, a totally new idea of communication between the people. And I will never say it's better, it's worse, because it's just like that. So the society is like that, it's producing that. So never watch back. I'm always looking forward. And as we at the beginning, and so what's happened with internet at the beginning, for instance. So internet, the first time I used the internet was the beginning of the 90s, and then there was this idea that internet was the future. And so all the sites were designed, also our website were designed in Flash, and with the so wow effect. Our website, for instance, was a tree that was like growing and stuff like that. Now that's the past. So Flash is not used anymore. The internet is used to be fast, to get information, to see photos. So the idea of itself, the communication of itself of the internet is self-service design. And that's also for the museum. So the museum, the third generation, we are discussing a lot also between, obviously always discussing, most of the time during lunchtime. And the future of the space is so, you cannot think about a world that is totally digitalized, because people want, at the beginning I was trying to explain some notes about our job. There's also a physical need to go inside a space and with other people to get in relations with the contents, but to share the contents also with the other people. It's different than staying on your sofa and watching your mobile and listening to a BBC docu movie that is interesting, and they're very well done. So different contents. There's now a multitude of possibilities at the moment, and the museums are becoming a place of attraction and of communication, not of just only of contents, but of the future of human beings. So there are places where, I guess, it's a place that has to open a discussion about how we want to see our future. And just the museums can do that, because there are public spaces in which art and other idea of let's say, of other subjects, also the poetry. We made, I have not the time to show the museums we did about on the poetry of Infinito. And so there are so many possibilities at the moment, and I guess the future of museums is that. It's a place of communication. Of course, also our job has changed a lot. Our idea of interaction has changed a lot. Our idea of perceptions that our set has to be Instagrammable, as I'm saying, I don't know the words, is something that you have to consider because it's important. It's important. We know that unfortunately, most of the time, the project you see on Instagram, where you go to see by life, they are poor because at the moment, technically, they use it. These mobiles are such a high technology and such a nice filter that you can totally modify the reality, no? And that's the worst side of Instagram. But the best side of Instagram is that it's a place of communication that can be used like others. And so the future of Instagram, we don't know. At the moment, it's used like it's like internet in the 90s, no?
Okay. So I don't know if Paolo, if you have, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think
I'm
that
confused. I'm talking.
no, you're not confusing us. You are inspiring us. But the point is that the time is gone. So I personally would spend hours and days listening to you and talking to you. So definitely we need to arrange another meeting in the future, or maybe the second edition of MED. So we will have hopefully the chance to talk again about these topics that are strictly connected with our reality and the way we exist as a human being. So thank you very much, Franco, for your participation. We were not able to be physical as your exhibition and your project required. Next time, hopefully, we will do it in presence, so we can also experience your abilities and your effect. We don't look for the hype as everybody does, so but we are very human and best friends. So thank you again for your time. Thank you to people listening to you and to us. And let's see in other meetings in the future.
Yeah, let's see also soon for the opening of the museum.
Yeah. Yes, we're opening the museum on the 25th of this month. So hopefully we will see with other people in the following days. So thank you and see you soon physically.
Yeah, that's so. Thank you to all. I just tell you at the beginning, we have a lot of we are on the social media, so you can follow us in Instagram, in Facebook, in LinkedIn. We have a site, and so a channel on YouTube and a channel on Vimeo. So if you have if you're interested, don't hesitate to visit us or also to write us.